Hi, everyone. We're going to visit for a little bit before I turn it over to our amazing speaker today, Adam Nash. First off, I wanted to thank all of the great volunteers on our Student Symposium committee this year that have been helping me out to keep all of these events running smoothly, and then all of the work behind them. So first, shout out to Lisa Barron from Dallas Design Group Interiors. You may have seen her in our earlier studio tour of her firm, residential design firm, so check her out if you have not already, but those will be up there so you can check it out. And then Ashlyn Bork, who's in the presentation now with us. Ashlyn, if you want to turn your camera on and just wave really fast. Or if not, no worries. But Ashlyn's our amazing ASID industry partner. Hi, friend.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Great
She's
to
our
be
amazing.
here with you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. Great to be here with you and Adam and all the students. So I'm proud to be a sponsor of Student Symposium.
Thank you. Yes, she's with our industry partner representative for Sherwin-Williams. Next up, we've got Brianne Bowers. She is another industry partner with Sub-Zero Wolf Cove. So if you have not been to her showroom yet over on Oak Lawn, it's absolutely beautiful. Just call, make sure you don't need an appointment first. And then our amazing SRB, our student representative to the board, who is actually a board member who sits in the board meetings with all of us other professionals and volunteers and industry partners. So she's a student from Baylor and active student ASID member and doing a fabulous job. And I think most of us were started off as SRBs, so that's a great volunteer position. We're always looking for students. Next up, Cody Rackley. He's an allied ASID, and he is actually going to be studying for the Q with me, hopefully next year. And then next, Veronica Sanders. She's another allied member, and she's got her own business, Design with Veronica Sanders. Our amazing Laura McDowell Stewart, who's also here. She is our IT chair, and hi. She has been keeping all of the virtual portion of this train on the rails, so to speak. So thank you. We've been texting and talking all hours of all days.
My pleasure.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. And she was just our moderator for Kenda. So we hope everybody got to stay for that one. Really quick, I also want to say thank you to our amazing sponsors. We've got our VVIP, who is ASID Texas Chapter, the Dallas design community that really stepped up and helped us with a lot of sponsorship this year. Next up, Fazy Rugs, which is our VIP sponsor, and you heard from them in our virtual exhibit hall on Monday. My company, Catherine Nelson Design, Plinth and Chintz, which is Laura McDonald Stewart's amazing interior design kind of virtual mentorship website. So check that out. She's got amazing resources. And then again, Sherwin-Williams, you met Ashlyn. Dallas Market Center, we had Michael Bauer attend some of our events on Monday. So check him out and follow him. ASID Austin Design Community, Fiber Seal, the Botanical Mix, Ludowici Dallas Design District. It's an amazing luxury, like bespoke roof company that's just unbelievable. So, and it's a funny name. So Ludowici is how you pronounce it. Renee Design Solutions and Design with Veronica Sanders. So before I brag on you, I just wanted to talk a little bit about something that happened to me literally this morning that helped me sell a client on something. And it was something that I learned in school, which she didn't know why the overhang was so big on the pony wall for this custom dog shower we're building in her mud room. And I literally was like, we need to do it this small because you did 3/4 of an inch, which I told him I wanted it smooth. And he did it huge. And I go, it doesn't look good with the counter. So you got to like fake it with your eye and use trompe-l'oeil. And he was like, huh? And I was like, it's like the Parthenon. The outside ones that don't have anything behind it look skinnier. So you have to make them visually bigger and cheat it. And he was like, oh, okay. I was like, or just cut it off and make it 3/8 of an inch overhang. But I was like, there's a reason to this. There's a method to the madness. So my client understood it too. She's an amazing art collector and very smart woman. So that's something I learned in school that I, truly did learn from today. So it helped me with my job. But that segues to our amazing Adam Nash, who you have an amazing, amazing background that kind of was a winding path, it sounds like, from what we've been visiting about to get to where you are now. So you are the assistant professor of interior design at Incarnate Word, University of Incarnate Word in San Antonio. That's where you're based out of. You have a bachelor's in interior design from University of Texas at San Antonio, a master's in interior design from SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, and you're currently working on your Ph.D. Look at you, little overachiever, you. And you're working on that at University of Missouri. Oh no, yes, right. Sorry, I'm reading from my cheat sheet. But you're a recipient of some many awards, 2019 ASID Ones to Watch Award, as well as very great part of being on the ASID Impact Review Task Force, which is really, really helping a lot of us business owners and ASID members and just designers as a whole, because this task force is specifically set up to help navigate COVID-19 and how this is going to affect our industry and our businesses and our clients. So, we're all design and knowledge-based, data-driven designs, so smart, and it just makes sense because then it proves why it's going to be, productive and work well. So without further ado, Adam, take it away.
Hi. So as Catherine said, I'm Adam Nash, and I just want to say thank you to everybody in attendance. I see a couple of familiar names, so you may have heard some of this before, but thank you to ASID for asking me to speak. I do enjoy talking, so I did want to sort of introduce, maybe the winding path or the winding journey that I have been on, because I know for a lot of, it's kind of a mixed group of students, professionals, and so for a lot of us, our paths to where we sort of end up, if we ever end up anywhere really, it is a winding road. And I've been fortunate enough in my career to have a lot of great people that have sort of, unexpectedly put me on a different path or a different course. And so all through my education, I did not expect to become an interior design educator. I was not, I didn't set out to teach. I knew that I liked commercial interiors, and I did a couple of different internships while I was working on my bachelor's to really be sure. But I actually started school as a psychology major because I really was curious about why people did what they did in the world, right? I just had a lot of questions about why people did what they did. And so like a lot of you, I may have just been, it may have just been curiosity that sort of drove me into psychology. But a lot of the questions that I was asking were focused on the environment, were focused on why people. One of the questions I remember asking when I first started school was why people sit in the furthest corner in a doctor's office waiting room. That was just really perplexing to me. And so I just always had all of these questions, and psychology just didn't seem to be answering all of those for me. I mean, it was a great field, but it just didn't speak to me in the way that it needed to. I didn't even know what interior design was, so I switched my major to English, and I was sort of set on I want to be a journalist. I really want to focus on writing, and I want to do research, and I knew I was interested in doing research and trying to understand the world in that way. And that also didn't speak to me. I loved research, but I felt as though I was sort of going towards English teaching, and that just really wasn't the path I wanted. And I actually bumped into someone while I was helping with a sorority. The sororities at UTSA had a group called Men of the Sorority. So it was Men of ESA, and I was sort of helping out with that. It actually was a lot of the girls' boyfriends that were a part of it, but I was friends, so I was like, I'm a part. And one of the students that was a part of the sorority was an interior design major, and so she actually started explaining interior design to me. so that's when I was like, that sounds like something I want to do. And so it was all because of her, that sort of random encounter that led me to interior design. And I gradually, through my interior design education, I realized that psychology and English could still be a part of my interior design path, at least the writing portion. Language has always been really important to me, and research was also very important to me. And I knew that psychology was critical to a successful interior design project. And so I did sort of bring that along with me. I didn't just look at it as something that, I needed to move past and get into interior design and just kind of ignore that. So I took psychology and I took English with me. When I got towards the end of my undergrad, I did really get more involved in research, and there really wasn't an opportunity to do more in-depth research as an undergraduate student. And so I asked one of my professors if they would do an extra independent study with me so that I could do maybe some graduate level research. And so I worked on a research study of open offices my senior year of my undergraduate education. And I was like, yeah, I want to go to grad school. So I had sort of set up a path for myself. Like, I think it's important for everyone. So as you're a student, I think it's important to set goals for yourself and at least have like milestones that you want to achieve. For me, it was graduating with undergraduate degree in interior design and then, getting my NCIDQ certification. I knew that would take me a little while, so I sort of set that goal a few years down the road. And then I knew after that, and I had some experience, that I would want to go to grad school. But I still thought it was just to do research. I did not think it would be teaching. So I did actually achieve those goals. I went to work at a commercial interior design firm, small firm here in San Antonio. And then I moved to a small firm in Austin and was working on larger commercial projects there. And then I was laid off. It was around a really tough economic time. And that was the sort of impetus, like the push for me to go to grad school. So I applied. The funny thing was, when I was an undergraduate student, I was told by my advisor that I probably wouldn't get into SCAD and that I should probably look at another university from grad school. So against my better judgment, because I knew I wanted to go to SCAD, but I was like, no, okay, I won't get in. I applied somewhere else and they actually did not admit me in the program. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna apply for SCAD, and they accepted me. So, I think sometimes we sort of have to go with our gut, right? We need to follow that instinct. And that's where I broadened my horizons and learned a lot more about sort of the more abstraction. And I really started looking at research and design in a much more macro way, like a really large way, compared to the micro way I had been looking at it previously. When I was getting close to graduating with my master's, I received an email from someone asking, that was teaching interior design, asking if I would come and talk about sustainable design to their class, because I had just finished my lead Green Associate. And so I agreed and went in, and it totally changed everything, because all of a sudden I was in front of this room of students, and they seemed so energetic and interested in the topic of sustainability. And at that time, it wasn't as maybe it is as common as it is now. And so I thought that might be something I'd like to do, but I didn't know that I could teach full time. So I started looking for opportunities to maybe guest lecture or teach. It just sounded interesting to me. And then an opportunity popped up to teach part-time at the Art Institute in their interior design program. So I did that. And that, again, I wanted to start teaching more because I really enjoyed it, but I still had a full-time position. And then all of a sudden a full-time position popped up at the Art Institute to teach. And so I was like, okay, sounds good. And I switched. And that's really, like, that's when I knew everything sort of fell into place. I knew that I was where I wanted to be. I had no intention of getting a PhD. I was done. I was good with my master's. No more school. And I started also teaching part-time at University of Incarnate Word, and then again, sort of opportunity opened up, and I thought, well, that sounds great. And I switched schools, and I am where I am now, and I feel like, again, everything sort of fits. I love the students, I love the program, and I really feel the mission of the university. So there have been a couple of times where people have asked me about this journey. I was interviewing years ago at Interior Architects in Chicago, and I had been through 6 or 7 interviews at this point, and for an interior design position there. And the project manager that I was interviewing with asked me about my journey, and she used the word journey, and I remember kind of taking a second and pausing and thinking like, okay, that's a big word. What does that really mean? Before I could answer, she started describing my resume in a way that was like, okay, so I see over this time period you did this, and it was almost like she was telling the story of my life just from my resume. And so I realized that, you know, something like that, like an on paper kind of document really could tell a part of my journey or my story. And realized like the sort of brand that carries with it. And then I was interviewing for my current position, and you know, anybody that knows like faculty interviews, it's actually a panel. So there's a big group of faculty from across the campus that interview you, and you go through a few different interviews as part of the process. And one of the faculty members from a different program asked if I could describe my transcripts. And that's such a big question too, you know, how do you describe your transcripts? But the only thing that kept sticking in my head was the journey. So I said, well, it is my journey. You'll see times where I had a really rough semester. I had a family emergency or a death in the family. You'll see where I struggled with some classes, or you might see where I was questioning, you know, my major early on and tried a few different classes. So it really did show the sort of up and down path and this kind of winding road that we take to find where we want to be. And then the last person that sort of put a term to my experience and my journey was just a family friend that I was visiting. And she asked me what had led me to teaching. And I said, you know, it was always just things that sounded fun or interesting. And I left myself open to the opportunity, and I tried it and I liked it. And that became something, right? That became the opportunity that I wanted. And she said, well, it sounds like serendipity. And even though I knew kind of what serendipity meant, I had to look it up just to be sure. And so ever since then, serendipity has been the term that I kind of carry with me as describing my journey and my path. And so really, like from my experience and what I might say to students looking forward and looking ahead into the future is really just be open to all of the possible opportunities that are coming, because truly there is a team out there waiting for you. There, you know, that you're gonna find the right fit. You're gonna find the right team or the right company that works well for you. And when you find it, you know. It kind of sounds like dating advice, because it's like you do sort of have to try a few, right, before you find the right one. But as soon as you know, it just falls into place and it feels right. So even those negative experiences, or even my layoffs, right, even when you get laid off or something happens, I learned from those, and I let those be the sort of push to something new. Try to always look for that positive opportunity that's coming, because, you know, it sounds so cliche, but when those doors close, right, those windows open, and you really just have to be open to seeing that window. I do also, you know, we know as interior designers and students that that everything is collaborative. So as students, you know, sometimes we hate that teamwork, but collaboration is such an important part of what we do as designers. And so everyone that you work with, you know, you are going to collaborate with them. And the goal would be that you really need to work well with as many people as you can. But like I said, sometimes you may notice that it just isn't the right fit, and that's okay. I think it's important for all of us to recognize that we're not perfect. and that we do have flaws, or we do have deficiencies, or we do have things that maybe we're just not as strong with. And that's okay too. But we have to be honest about it, because the team that we're a part of, they potentially will be able to sort of supplement wherever you might be lacking. But if you're not honest about your strengths and your weaknesses, then that collaboration doesn't really work as well as it could. Once you find that right team, that right fit, that right group, and you know it, you will be able to work with each other in ways that, you know, things that may seem like negatives to you become positives. Just as one example, and then I'll try to wrap it up so that we have time for questions. But I know that when I first started working as a commercial project designer in Austin, and I was working on a large commercial project, and you know, it was intimidating. I also didn't have we didn't have a lot of courses in hand rendering when I was a student, just in the program that I was in. And so I felt really like self-conscious about that hand rendering. But I loved marker and I loved grayscale. And I was like, I got my Prismas, and I had my various grays in Prismas. And actually what worked really well was that the other designers that I was working with had some amazing hand rendering skills. So I would actually draft out a perspective view, go in and shade it with the grays, like do the sort of shadows and shading, and then pass it to another designer who would come in and do all of the color rendering. And then someone else would come in and add the ink details on top. And so it became such a really fruitful collaboration. And even what I was so nervous about and thought that I just wasn't good at, became my strength. It became something that I could be proud of. So never, well, I don't want to say never, but always try to be honest with yourself, right? And know that everyone on your design team is there to help you. And I think that's a really great positive way of moving forward with interior design. Okay, I will wrap mine up if there are any questions for me.
Sorry, I had a little technology thing. So if I start getting fuzzy, I don't know why our internet likes to reset at like end of day school let out and then at like end of day office time. So I will do my best to stay on. That was great, Adam. I loved learning some stuff from you. So if anybody has any questions, don't be shy. There are no dumb questions. We're not going to laugh at anybody. Please utilize the chat box. If anybody wants to turn their camera on and virtually meet, it'd be like if we're at a real design cocktail party, walk over and get a little courage and go say hi to that person you don't know. And who knows, it may turn out your best friend, Ashlyn. Oh, there she is. You become friends with some of these great people. So love all your plants, Adam. Yes, I do too. That's what I said. I was like, you're giving me like plant lady envy over here.
You know,
I've got to get busy.
This is just a background, but I do love finding images like this to sort of spice up the Zoom meetings.
Before we jumped on, he was actually going through and showing me some of his favorite ones that he uses, which was really fun. And I was like, I need to start doing that so I don't have to clean my office every day and set up my little shooting zone.
Yeah.
You taught me that too. Laura saying, yeah, know your strengths and know your weaknesses, be able to communicate both. That's so true. We're going to go into some more stuff in our real life HR and hiring tips event tomorrow. So tomorrow, I was like, it's Blur's Day. Wednesday, Thursday, yes, tomorrow. So we'll go over that tomorrow. So it's very insightful.
Well, I have a question.
Please go.
So this is a question I always like to ask designers because it's just something that makes you relatable. As far as, you know, when you start out and you get your first jobs, and heck, even when you've had jobs for a while, you know, you're going to make some mistakes. And so I always love to ask designers, like, what was a mistake that you remember making that you were just pretty devastated about? And then what did you do about it? And then how did you, what did you learn from it? What did you take away from it that has benefited you since?
It is a great question to ask because it forces you to really like confront something. And I think, I think one of the, and I've probably told this in classes before too, because I use myself as examples a lot when I'm teaching students, but so I didn't know when I was first starting out as a designer. Well, there's a couple of things. My first internship that I worked with was a residential internship. And at the time I was a sophomore, I didn't have to do an internship, but I was like, I really want to start working. And so I was a little bit older as a student. So I got my internship and I started working. And I didn't know to ask questions. I didn't know anything about NCIDQ. I didn't know any real questions to ask. And I didn't realize that I wasn't working at a design firm, that I wasn't working with interior designers. I was working with marketing professionals, and they were calling it a design, like designs, and they didn't really tell me anything. So I kind of assumed that I was working with interior designers. So that was one mistake, and really I stayed there for 2 years actually, and I learned a lot about marketing from them, which was really helpful. They also showed me a lot about Photoshop and Illustrator that I didn't know, and I wasn't really learning as much. So like I say, like the negatives kind of become the positives for me. But one mistake that I really did make in that position was I asked for samples, and on commercial projects we can ask for yard samples sometimes, and to show the client on like a larger scale, even if it doesn't have like a repeat where you need a yard. And I didn't, I did something sort of unethical where I asked for multiple yards because I was like, oh, that's a pretty fabric and I want to use it. And so I was young and I was like, I want to keep this fabric and I want to upholster things with it. And so it was a kind of unethical, right? But I ended up having to like recognize that mistake and sort of admit to like, okay, I did something unethical. I didn't think it was a big deal. It was coming from a large manufacturer, but in the end, it really was affecting the client, right? It was the client's budget that was going to go pay for this fabric, and so really what I did was just admit it and kind of talk to the client and say like, here's what I did. Here's the mistake that I made, and if you want it, it's all yours, right? And they were great about it. I think because it was a sort of honest discussion where and they knew that I was sort of new and wasn't really aware, that it became a great kind of learning moment for me. And they actually were like, okay, just keep it, use it, upholster what you want. But it's something I never did again because I realized like, okay, yeah, I'm getting into a really difficult ethical situation here. We get benefits, right? Sometimes we get some great things as designers, and we have to recognize like, okay, put it in context, right?
Good point.
Yeah, great points, you guys. Hi, Madeline. Thanks for turning on your camera.
Hi. I actually have a question. You mentioned that you mentioned hand rendering, and I'm an interior design major at Baylor. I'm also a studio art minor. And I think something that I've always wondered is how relevant is like studio art and hand rendering and actually like bringing that into the interior design world today. Because, technology is becoming a thing. Graphic design is more and more important. And it seems like physical art is becoming less important in the design process.
I think that's a great question, and nice to see you, Madeline. I think when we are looking at, so we were having a conversation about this earlier, actually, Catherine and I, about technology and software skills, and my comment was that I think there is a really interesting conversation going on, and I'm not going to say I have the answer, but I think that there's an interesting conversation because designers that have relied heavily on hand rendering, right, that is such a talent, and you see these beautiful hand renderings. I think sometimes it looks as though when we are utilizing technology to create these sort of photorealistic renderings, or, you know, we have so much software available to us that it starts to act as a crutch, where we're relying heavily on the software to do the work, and we sort of lose that hand ability. In interior design, I don't believe that we're ever going to lose the need for hand rendering. I think it's the same as drafting. I think we're always going to have to know how to hand draft, because I think it's so important to understand that the relationship of working with our hands and then moving onto a computer. We do lose a little bit of that speed and critical thinking if we just go on to technology. And critical thinking is one of those things that the more we use technology, the less we're critically thinking. And so I think personally that it's always going to be important that you have some knowledge and ability. Of course, I'm sure with studio art, there's so much more that you can do by hand, so much more that you can sort of create. And so that adds to your value as a designer coming in, because you now have skills that others don't. And as kind of a little story with that, you know, I took a group of students to Chicago earlier this year, or no, last year. Oof, it's all running together now. And we went to, this was last year, we went to NeoCon. And we visited Gensler, and we visited interior architects. And some of the questions that students asked were the same as this about hand rendering. And they were happy to show us the hand renderings that had been done for the firm and the models that had been built for different projects. And the only difference was because of the size of the firm, they had individuals that focused on that, and that was part of their sort of daily job. So I think it kind of gives you more opportunity, right? Because it shows a skill, a unique sort of ability that you can take into a large firm like that and create a niche for yourself.
Great question, Madeline. And, you know, I don't want to, I'm not the speaker, Adam is, but it'll also help you get really fancy, expensive art with your clients and make you better business, if you think about it that way too. So I think every skill is going to help you just be a better professional. And I think we have another question from Madison Peak. Are there certain aspects either within your personality or skills that lead you to teaching, traits or skills you feel lend themselves to teaching?
So yeah, I want to say that the skills that we learn as designers are the same skills that we would use as educators. A lot of times I don't rely on the word professor, because I never feel like I actually am professing something. And so I usually am like, I'm a teacher, and that's just kind of what I say. I also think that you know, when we talk about like the language of it, you know, I'm a collaborator more than anything. And I think that is what's helped me as a teacher, is the ability to collaborate, because especially now as we're sort of dealing with the issues, you know, and the changes that we're dealing with, my students have helped me so much, because there's some things that I just don't know if they're working, or I don't know, you know, how do we learn this, or how do we teach this? And so I've actually worked with my students a lot to sort of create the classes for them, because, you know, we're all in it together. And I think that collaboration and the ability to sort of communicate with people is really those are the critical skills, right? I don't think that you need any special ability for public speaking, and again, that may be an unpopular opinion, but that's mine. Because I get nervous every time I have to go in front of people. I get nervous at the start of every semester. Even though I may have known the students over the course of 4 years and I'm seeing them just again and they know me, I still get nervous going into that room. But I'm honest about it, and I talk to the students about it, like, you know, honestly, I'm not sure, or let's have a conversation about this, or, you know, I try to be as transparent as possible. And I really think that sometimes just being able to communicate. And you know, I see a student of mine on here, so they may be able to say something different. But yeah, I think that those are really the sort of critical skills that you need.
I was going to see if we had any other questions. Students, don't be shy. Like, we still got time. If not, I have some questions for you, because I always think this is fun. You know, you have a winding path to where you came to. So I'm sure you probably had all different school subjects, you know, middle school, high school, college, masters. Like, what are some of those and why for you?
Like subjects that are important to me, or
Like when I was little, I was really into biology and I loved collecting bugs, and then I got into geology and then psychology in college and then all this other stuff. But
yeah, Catherine, I think you and I have a lot of similarities, just like Laura and I do when it comes to our paths. So the funniest thing, and it's not so school related, but when I was a kid, so my mom was a single mom, and she got me really into reading. And so we would always read the same books. So my mom loved Stephen King. So as a kid, I would read Stephen King books all the time, and we would talk about the books. And then I was like, I'm gonna be a writer. And so, and this was like elementary school. So my mom would, I would write books, and my mom would buy like contact paper, and we would create the covers for the books and then put contact paper on it so that it was like a sort of a bound book. So I had all of these books that I had written, and they were just silly. I still have some of them, but that I think really did become a big part of who I am, because it created this I recognize the importance of language, and I also learned a lot about myself and being introverted. And there's a great book called Quiet, if you've never read it, The Power of Being an Introvert. And once I read that book, I was like, you know, my world has changed. Because instead of looking at being introverted as a negative, I found it to be such a positive, and I was able to rely on it as a strength. And it made sense then what my entire life of sort of thinking and analyzing and you know, trying to find the right words and understand the language and write, all of those things became, I guess, the subjects of my life, right? Because they sort of informed what I valued as I moved through my education. But like I said before, the questions too, like I just always had such a curious mind when it came to like why people were doing what they were doing. And I just always asked questions. I'm sure it drove my family crazy, but it really kind of created a path for me.
I think that's great. I think, and it's so true. You know, it just, everything that you learn just makes you, I think it's just, I think all of us have it in learning, like we're learning nerds. We love learning and we never want to stop it. You know, I literally was just saying, oh, I don't know that book. Let me look it up really fast and screenshot it so I don't forget after this, or I have to go back and rewatch our recording, because I always love book suggestions. Unfortunately, I have too many on my shelves that are waiting to be read, but one day. Any other questions? This is so comforting. I'm glad that I will be able to utilize that skill in my actual career. Madeline, yes, very true. Be a sponge.
Oh yeah, a sponge is such a great, such a great example, because I think staying open to every experience and, you know, everything that kind of comes along, just absorb that. You know, I do want to add too, because I have at least one student on here, that the sort of love of books and the importance of reading, I still bring it into the classroom. Like I try in as many classes as possible to set up a book club with the students where we purchase, as a department, we'll purchase books. And it's usually not a textbook, like just an outside book that's sort of related to the class. And then we give it to the students in the class, and as a group, we all sort of read a chapter each week and have a discussion about the chapter. And that's also been super rewarding for me, and I hope it's rewarding for them. But I've learned a lot from my students just as much as I hope they've learned from me.
Any other questions? Anybody? Because we could keep chatting for forever. Thanks, Laura. I know, Adam, this is so great to hear from you. And, I know this was kind of adapting, but this is kind of like, the equivalent of a professional business mixer that you go walk over and say hi to someone and catch up with them. So I think this is good. If anybody wants to turn their camera on, it's a small group, but, if you're up for it, feel free to. And thanks, Anne, for joining us. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. I think just a little thing outside of this, here's just stuff we're learning. Like we're learning today, I learned I need to get a really good photo for my Zoom. So I don't have to set up my area every time and clean my office. But Cheryl Beck's here as well. Thanks for joining us, Cheryl. There's another great example. If you can't be on camera, have a picture of your face. And I need to work on that too. I need to get a better headshot, but that's a whole nother story. But this is how you're going to be doing interviews possibly for internship. So students, set your Zoom up right and put your name, your full name. Say if you're a student ASID member, use your appellations and get that. Pat saying, don't you find that the more that you visualize with the characters in the books, it helps you be more creative in design? What do you think, Adam?
Honestly, So a lot of you may not be horror writing fans, but Stephen King has always sort of been it's like my guilty pleasure that I read in my off time. And plus the fact that he turns out like a book every 3 months is pretty convenient. But that's always helped me because he is such a descriptive visual writer that I do find that when I start thinking about trying to visualize this story, that he has so many extra details that it becomes this really detailed visual, and it does help me kind of move forward if I'm working on a design. Yeah.
Ashlyn, I love your comment. Your mom loves reading Stephen King. You could do the movies, but the books feel a little too real. I'm with you there. Adam, after this, we need to share some of our favorite horror shows and movies. I'm a big American Horror Story Ryan Murphy fan, but he does everything, I think, good in my mind. But Pat, yes. Any other questions from anybody for our wonderful guest, Adam? Ashlyn, question. You want to unmute?
I have a question. Well, and what are some little things that you might tell students, Adam, to get them ready for professional life? So maybe professional tips, best practices. I know we'll cover that in another roundtable, but I'd love to get your input.
Honestly, I think, I know I've overused collaboration and communication, but I think being consistent with who you are, and part of that comes from knowing who you are and being honest about who you are. We do an exercise, I do an exercise with seniors where we sort of try to evaluate ourselves, and not just design-wise, but really like who are we as a person. And that becomes a part of like branding ourselves. But I think sometimes we represent ourselves in one way, and because we don't know ourselves very well, then we get out there and we're interviewing for positions, and what we're saying doesn't really match with what's on paper. And I think really being consistent with the message of who you are, knowing who you are, and being honest about that, it helps us get away from trying to be a people pleaser. And I think, when firms are hiring, when designers are hiring, we're not really looking for people pleasers, right? We don't want people that just say yes all the time. We want somebody that we can really collaborate with. And I think that you have to know who the person is to be able to do that. And if an entry-level designer is not really telling you who they are, then it's a difficult, it's difficult to hire them and to work with them because you just don't know if it's going to work. Yeah, I mean, I guess aside from like collaboration and communication, that would be the biggest thing that I think is important, is to really know who you are and be honest about yourself.
Great question. And just to kind of piggyback off of that, Adam, I think, you know, we have a lot of students saying like what should they be doing in between, you know, maybe a hiring lull or waiting for an internship to be available come spring, summer of 2021. You know, this is all this time that you've got, you know, outside of all your studies and class projects, but, you know, this is where you can learn about you. You know, I think that's what we've kind of learned about. And I hate the phrase unprecedented times, but that's what we live in. But it's teaching us our resilience, how we can adapt, how we can become better people, who our true friends are. Like, there's so many things in life, and it's just, it's putting so much into perspective.
Yeah, I do think that one thing that I did because I was trying to find a position at a really weird economic time. And one thing that I did was I started asking designers if I could just come shadow them. And so I would always go to like whoever was the owner or the principal and ask, you know, hey, can I just come sit with you and just watch what you're doing? And that was a really great way of networking too, because I would just sort of introduce myself and just jump in and sit there. And I met so many great people and made some good connections that way.
That's great. We've got a couple of questions popping, so I just want to make sure so we don't have to cut you short. We respect everyone's questions. From Pat, what is the most fun class for you to teach?
So, you know what, I think the most fun class has just not been taught yet. I'm super excited to teach a new class that's coming up called Wellness and Transparency, where we are creating an elective studio to teach well, but also apply it to a healthcare project. And in the end, students will have the opportunity to take the Well AP as their final exam. And so I'm excited about that, like super excited. But commercial design studios are my absolute favorite. I love the studio course, and I really like seeing the new ideas that students come with, because every semester there's something I just never would have thought of. So.
And really fast too, I know I was a victim of this. You know, we see all these letters I call alphabet soup, but I say that with love after your name, Adam. If you go on the website, and it's Adam Nash, that's why we had to say ASID, IDEC, etc., because you've got IIDA, NCIDQ, Well AP, Lead Green Associate, like that. You don't have enough screen space for all of your amazing appellations. So could you go into those just a little bit and better explain those for our students?
Sure, yeah. So of course ASID, right? And I think what a lot of students don't recognize, you know, usually we have different levels, right? So you'll see different levels of ASID, different levels of IIDA. But of course, ASID and IIDA are both professional membership organizations, right, for interior design. And then when we look at IDEC, that's the Interior Design Educators Council. And so just another professional organization, but for educators. NCIDQ is our National Council of Interior Design Qualification. That's the test, right, that qualifies us as an interior designer to practice with a certain level, right, where we've said, okay, I have the skills and the knowledge to be certified across the board. NCIDQ didn't used to be an appellation, but it became an appellation now that we can put after our name. NCIDQ used to be the certification that was required to become registered interior designers in the state of Texas. Now NCIDQ can be after your name. I was RID, but I went inactive because I just wasn't utilizing it enough. And then now I have to think about them. I just actually completed my Well AP over the summer, which is what I did in between semesters too, as I was preparing classes and working on my PhD. But Laura McDonald Stewart, who already left, she and I both completed our Well APs right around the same time. And then Lead Green Associate is the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which is the sustainability designation from the US GBC and GBCI, which, you know, Green Building Certification Institute. It's all letters. And once you get used to all the letters, you know, of course, it starts to make sense. But.
Well, and I think, you know, students, we're not all millionaires. You know, these organizations cost money, and if you don't put time into them and volunteer and actually utilize them, you know, it's just letters at the end of your name, and it's not going to really help you if you're not utilizing it. So I can't stress the importance enough. You know, I myself had to push pause on it, but now we're studying for the Q. So I'll hopefully have some of those admirable letters at the end of my name one day. Really quick, so we don't have to cut her off, your answer off. Madison Peak has another good question. I'm also a senior and still not sure what I want to do or where I want to be. Everything sounds exciting. Any advice on figuring that out? What I want to do? Apologies. Oh, sorry.
Honestly, I think I didn't know either, right? When I was a student, I didn't know. And some programs don't require internships and some do. Even if you're not required to, I still recommend trying to get an internship or shadow, right? I think being exposed to as many different design disciplines as you can is really helpful, because you're just not gonna know until you do it, right? Or until you're there in the environment. And sometimes shadowing is the only way that you can do that. But I think, you know, the first step is really attending different student conferences and student organization events and really kind of networking and meeting people. So I think this is a great step, right? Because you're sort of hearing different facets of interior design and getting information about it. But it's okay, even if you graduate and you're not sure, it's okay to try different things, and then, you know, you'll arrive where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I can't agree with you enough, Adam. I think, Madison, please don't miss out on our real life HR tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, because I'm going to go into, you know, my kind of story, how I am now, how I look for hires, since I have 2 designers with me, thankfully. Actually hired on during COVID, which is kind of crazy to admit. Most people are getting laid off, but we're busier than ever. But we'll go into all of that tomorrow. And then we've also got Lisa Barron and another executive from her office talking about 40-plus-year-old residential firms. So, you know, I think it's kind of just, you live and you learn, you know. Thank you so much for the advice, Madison, saying thank you for attending and putting yourself, you know, in a better place. We will need to probably say bye so we can give people a time if they need to use the restroom or let a dog out, change the diaper on the baby, whatever they're doing in their lives before we jump into our next one. We've got Medtronic, Kristen Hamburg of Medtronic, and she's going to be with Laura McDonald Stewart. So Laura had to jump out so she could get that all going. But thank you so much, Adam, for your time today. It's just been so good to get to know you and sage advice.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming in.
Okay.
Bye.
We will jump out. Bye, everyone. Thank you.